Welcome back to the Extremely Sophisticated. I am Stormcrow, philosophy graduate, and today, without much ado, I will address a philosophy-focused topic briefly and clearly. This time, I'm recording the video since the YouTube algorithm wants us to show ourselves rather than just relying on artificial intelligence content. All of my videos are studied, researched, and scripted by me. So this is another translation from my previous works. And apologies in advance for my pronunciation and spelling mistakes. English is not my mother tongue. And I often speak 3 different languages in a single day. Sometimes my mind just lets get a little frustrated. Alright, let's get into today's topic. The fine-tuning argument, one of my most debated topics in philosophy, and midges on both ends. This argument, often adored by theologians, is also heavily defended by those who love the philosophy of religion. As you know, for the theology fans trying to move on one step beyond if you think of God, then He exists, rhetoric in order to prove God's existence. This argument is godsend. It appears more scientific and finally less ridiculous, following the likes of the pilot pen or watchmaker analogies. But just like in religions, whenever objections are raised, they often just plug their ears instead of addressing them. First, let's briefly examine it. The development of this argument in its contemporary form is often associated with the names like physicists Fred Hoyle and Brandon Carter. In 1974, Carter formulated the anthropic principle, which argues that the conditions of the universe are fine-tuned to support life, and this principle forms the basis of the fine-tuning argument. In the 20th century, one of the most significant figures defending this topic in the theological and cosmological context is William Lane Craig. The fine-tuning argument claims that the fact certain physical constants and laws of the universe exist within a very narrow range for life to be possible could indicate the existence of a designer. It argues that if the fundamental constants of the universe, such as the gravitational constant, electromagnetic forces, or the masses of subatomic particles were altered even slightly, the universe would have emerged in a way incapable of harboring life. For supporters of the argument, this is not mere coincidence, but an indicator of purpose or design. Simply put, it claims life could not exist if the current conditions were off by even a fraction. The idea is that God did the math, found the right ratio, and that if this setting were shifted left or right, like tuning a radio receiver, life would not exist. Although I will skip the ethical problems in the design, I want to highlight a logical inconsistency. The fine-tuning argument assumes that this life, the life we know, is the only possible form of life. For example, suppose the gravitational content in our universe corresponds to a fixed number x. The claim is that if it were x minus 1 or x plus 1, life could not exist. But according to whom and what standard of life? It is true that the life forms existing at x could not exist at x minus 1 or plus 1. But that does not mean that other beings could not exist under those conditions. Even if the design changes, other life forms suitable for the new design could continue to exist. After all, the greatest lesson life teaches us that adaptation. Life can evolve into any form that suits the prevailing conditions. In evolutionary biology, randomness is tied to the interaction of genetic variation, mutation, and natural selection. Mutations create random changes in genetic material, and some of these changes increase the chance of survival. Over time, this process leads to the emergence of new species. So, wouldn't it be more reasonable to think God created the principle of evolutionary randomness, rather than finely tuning the life of nature or locking the life into fixed conditions? Contrary to fine-tuning supporters, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in quantum mechanics shows us that it is impossible to measure a particle's position and momentum with perfect accuracy. At the atomic and subatomic level, we see fundamentally unpredictable random behavior. Randomness is also used in mathematics and science. For instance, Monte Carlo simulations use random numbers to study the behavior of complex systems. These models embrace uncertainty and calculate many possible outcomes. So in the end, the finite argument becomes just another futile exercise by modern theists who are still trying to prove God's existence. On social media, it is often raised as the new trump card of religion's defenders against critics. But what they don't realize is that they are still trying to fit God into their own molds. By doing so, they actually diminish the concept of God, reducing him to the level of dogmatic religions that oppose science. God did not create the universe for humankind or its equivalents, nor is God a Zeus or Odin anthropic deities reflecting human behaviors. The God of the four major religions is no different from the ancient gods, and if such God really existed, surely he could have done better than sending a book to the Middle East. Even if he had done so, he would still fall short of perfection incapable of making of such a fine-tuning. Rather than the fallacy of fine-tuning, the principle of initial randomness might actually prove God to be a far greater designer. That's all from me for today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about what topic you'd like me cover next. See you in the next one.